Hi, I'm Dana, and we're here today with yet another video that I don't think is very fun at all, but I think it's an important topic to talk about. Obviously, if you've experienced self-harm yourself, if this is something likely to trigger you or upset you or in any way have a negative effect on your mental well-being, your general self, please don't watch this video. We're going to be getting in-depth on self-harm, and I don't want it to be negative to anyone. I want this to be like a positive way of discussing it in order to help and assist people and blah blah blah. I don't want it to fuck someone up, basically. If you think it's going to have a negative effect on you, please don't watch it. Just skip this one, it's fine. I had a lot of experience with self-harm in my teen years, and it's something that's definitely continued for me. And I googled about it recently because I was like, is it just because I'm like a depressive kind of person? Is it just because I get anxious? Or is it another thing that ties in with autism? And although obviously it's not a case of I self-harm because I'm autistic, I did some googling recently and I found a couple of places that I'll link down below that were saying that not only do almost half of all autistic people self-harm according to their studies, but we're also like 3 times more likely to self-harm than non-autistic people. And again, it's the argument of, well, I think we're more likely to be anxious and depressed because we're autistic, because of the way that society treats us and the difficulties that we have. So yeah, we will then be more likely to self-harm. But, you know, as always, everything seems to be coming from a non-autistic point of view. And as someone who has unfortunately had a lot of times that I have self-harmed and a lot of experience with it, I think it'd be good to get an actual autistic perspective out there, because I think self-harm is something that's so misunderstood and stigmatised anyway, and especially for autistic people, which is where we're really getting into this, because I think that a lot of people, when we think of self-harm, we exclusively think of cutting ourselves, which admittedly is, sorry, Ringo's going up on the cat tree, which is what I predominantly did. However, there's a whole like umbrella to self-harm, you know, and that's where we get into like the stereotypes of autistic people banging their head against the wall or hitting themselves. You know, that they are types of self-harm that some autistic people do. And obviously it's very frustrating for people like myself when people in general seem to assume if I'm not banging my head against the wall, I'm not autistic. But it's a form of self-harm that does happen and that some autistic people do use. You know, and I think it's something that we assume people with like lower support needs like myself would never do. We don't do stuff like that. And it's like, no, but when I get really, really sad or really anxious or really frustrated, I have hit myself, you know, and it's in a more socially acceptable way, because I'll like punch my leg and be like, oh damn, in the way that a neurotypical might, because I've seen people do that. I know that that's an acceptable way of hitting yourself. But if I didn't masturbate that idea, if I had higher support needs or so on and so forth, if I was less self-aware, I would just be the autistic person hitting myself. And I don't want to delve too much into like the stigma around different types of autistic people and blah blah blah, but yeah, umbrella terms of self-harm means that in a lot of ways I was like, oh well, I don't self-harm anymore, I don't do that because I don't cut myself anymore often. I have slip-ups, it's a difficult thing to recover from and blah blah blah. So although for the most part that's not something I do consistently pinch myself. Like with my nails, I pinch my wrists really, really hard when I'm anxious, when I'm sad, when I'm overwhelmed, when I'm overstimulated. You know, there's a lot of situations in which I pinch myself, and that's self-harm. You might notice that I nearly always have a bobble on my wrist, and I've been known to do the old snap a rubber band on your wrist to get over the cravings, which doesn't work. I think it's pretty useless, and I think it's terrible advice to give to people for the most part, but you know, maybe it helps someone, I guess. But also, I'm not entirely sure what it is I do, to be honest with you. But when I'm really focused, when I'm really concentrating on something, especially if something is frustrating me, like I had to put together a flat pack chest of drawers recently, and my experience has always been that it just has like the bit on the side and you slide the drawer on, but this one had like a whole interlocking system and I had to like screw. It was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare. And when I was done, I realised I'd been like pursing my lips or biting my lips or doing something with my mouth. That meant when I was done, I relaxed. I was like, oh crap, my lips and my mouth really hurt. Like they really hurt. And it's not even something I noticed I was doing, but it was definitely self-harm. I was definitely biting myself or doing something, you know. But as we've gathered, I'm terrible at telling a linear story. So I want to take you back to my teen years, because I was 12 when I first started self-harming. I I never know how much detail to go into because I don't want to trigger anyone. So I started self-harming at 12. We'd just been through a big move to a different country, followed by a smaller move to a different town within the country. And I was depressed as shit, to be frank with you. I was horrendously depressed. My whole family was depressed. It was a bad time. And I'd found many a pro-ana website and many a girl talking about self-harm. And I was like, well, they say it helps, so I'll give it a go. And boom, that was the rest of my life sorted out. I kind of want to make a whole video about like the pro-ana websites of the noughties, because like, boy, do I still have issues from them. But yeah, that was where I first heard about self-harm. And my reaction was literally like, these girls are saying this will make me feel better. I'll take anything that'll make me feel better. So I stole some blades off my dad and I cut myself. And then, you know, and it was immediate relief. It was immediate relief. You know, it was the first time in like months and months and months that I had just this one thing I could focus on, and everything else just fell away, and I wasn't overstimulated, I wasn't overthinking, I wasn't depressed, I wasn't anxious, you know, it was all gone because I had this one thing, I had this pain that I could focus on, and I could breathe. Like, that was how it felt. It felt like I could breathe, you know. And it's fucky to look back on it like that, because, you know, it's something that I now consistently struggle with. I have, every time something goes wrong in my life, or I have a bad day, or like yesterday I fucking spilt my sugar bowl while I was trying to make myself a cuppa to cheer myself up. And my immediate thought was like, fuck, I just want to cut myself. Like, if it's not, I want to die, it goes to self-harm. That's my immediate coping mechanism for anything that makes me feel like any negative emotion. So from then, I had probably 3 years of cutting myself pretty much every day, sometimes multiple times a day. It was the only thing that made it feel like I could get through the day. You know, it was very much, it was the only way I could cope with life, to be honest with you. Getting that little rush of like whatever chemicals you get when you do that, and having the ritual of it, the routine of it, which is where I do think it really ties into autism. Because, you know, I had like my little set of blades that I used, and there was a way that I laid them out, and there was a way that I did it to myself, and it was all very routine and methodical, and everything, like, you know, I cleaned everything before and after. I made sure everything was clean. It was very methodical. It was a big part of my routine. And it was, you know, at the time, obviously it wasn't. It was the exact opposite of self-care. But at the time, it kind of felt like a way of self-care. It was a methodical routine of this thing that I'd found that made me feel better. It was, I didn't know what self-care was at the time, but if I had, I absolutely would have seen it as like, this is how I look after myself. Which is really gross and screwy, and it really shows what kind of effect like the media can have on a young brain, because I'm 25 now, it's been over a decade, and my go-to thought when something goes wrong is still, that's what I want to do, that's the coping mechanism, that will make me feel better, that's what I want. And the other area I think it ties into autism is that, like, obviously a lot of us process things differently to neurotypicals. That's what it is to be autistic, pretty much. And I think the way that I process pain is quite different to the average person. You know, like, if I stub my toe, it hurts. I'm like, oh, fuck, I've stubbed my toe, ow, ow, ow. But, like, when it's more of a prolonged, sharp pain of some sort, like when I've gotten tattoos, I've got several, like, none of them are huge, but I've got quite a few largish tattoos. And it don't bother me. Like, it doesn't bother me. I can just sit there and be fine. With this one specifically, there was a full-ass grown man that I ended up getting a snake off that was sat over, like, across from me, who was almost in tears. And I was just sat there having a chat. Like, and this isn't like I'm hard. Like, it just, I don't think that I process prolonged pain, I guess, in the way that other people do. It just, I can feel that it hurts, but I know it's going to be happening for a while, so it just becomes a different sensory experience for me, kind of, I guess. It kind of, like, it still hurts, but it stops being pain, almost. And I've had that with other things as well. I'm sure, like, another example would be that I broke my wrist when I was about 8. Like, I was in primary school still, I broke my wrist, and I didn't get any help for it for several hours because I didn't cry. So my school just whacked a little damp blue paper towel on there, and I'm like, yeah, she'll be fine. And then my mum came in and was like, why can you not move your hand? I was like, oh, I hurt my wrist. And we went and found out it was broken. But when they were asking me like for a pain scale and stuff, I was like a 3. Like it kind of hurts, but I'm used to it now. It's been hurting for a bit. Like, so yeah, I think that the way that I process pain in my brain is probably a bit different to other people's as well, which meant that it was kind of a sensory experience for me to self-harm. And like I say, it definitely was a sensory experience because it calmed me down. It basically did what like fidget toys are meant to do, you know, but to the extreme. It was a physical sensation on my body, a physical sensory thing of, okay, I can feel this and I feel better now. Yeah, I think that's another area that really separates autistic people that self-harm from the standard population of people that self-harm, because the other people that I saw online were constantly talking about how annoying it was when their cuts were healing and like when it starts hurting again, or when it like peels and when it itches and when it does this. And it didn't really bother me. I kind of almost, I don't want to use positive language around this because it's not a positive coping mechanism. It's not something I want to do. It's not something I in any way want to encourage other people to do. But I personally kind of liked that there was a continued sensation because it was like the sensory relief continuing for me, I guess. Something like that. It was something to do with that, guys. I'm trying my best. But moving on to now, because I feel like in my adult life, I kind of self-harm in more of an autistic way. Because like I say, I've hit myself quite a few times, like recently, I guess. And I pinch myself a lot. That's one thing that I really probably should stop doing, because I've made myself bleed doing it when I've had longer nails and shit. And I've like had weird ass bruises and stuff. It's, you know, it's not a good coping mechanism. Don't self-harm, kids. But once you're into it, once you're fucking in there and you've done it and you know how it feels and you know the relief, it's difficult to stop. It's hard as fuck to stop. Yeah, and I don't feel like I can really say I have stopped, because like I say, it's still the thought when something goes wrong is that's what I want to do, which means that, you know, maybe it's once a year, maybe it's once every 2 years, you know, it's very occasional now, but I slip up still. But because that's my history of self-harm, it's very easy for me to just sort of wipe off things like pinching myself or hitting myself. Because like, well, I'm not bleeding, it's not scarring me, so it's not self-harm. But it is, it absolutely is. And finding different coping mechanisms is definitely important. I haven't done it yet, like, I haven't got any advice for you, but it's definitely the thing to be done. But steering away from my experience a little bit, I'm doing a course at the minute. I'm doing a level 2 in understanding autism, and you're gonna be hearing a lot about that at some point, because holy fuck is education around autism not fabulous. But it has definitely increased my, I don't want to say knowledge, because it's definitely written by non-autistic people, so I don't feel like I am really gaining knowledge, but it's made me perhaps more aware of autistic people with high support needs and the way that they're seen by neurotypicals. Because there is so much talk in it about those with high support needs, or as they say, low functioning. There's a lot of talk about those with high support needs hitting themselves and showing undesirable behaviour and difficult to cope with behaviour. And it pisses me off, because I'm sorry, but if someone's sat there hitting themselves, that is, number one, not difficult behaviour for you, is it? Like, they're the ones currently hurting themselves, they're in literal pain. Like, yeah, it's their own fault, but like, I don't think that's an issue for you. And secondly, they're not doing it for no reason. They're not doing it because they're autistic and they think it's funny. They're reacting to something, and that doesn't seem to be approached at any point. So I do feel like, just for myself more than anything, I need to say, like, they're reacting to something. There is something they don't like going on that's causing them distress, and they're self-harming by hitting themselves or hitting their head against the wall or biting or whatever else. They're doing that in reaction to whatever's distressing them. Figure out what it is. Is it too bright? Is it too loud? Are they overstimulated? Are they understimulated? Are they bored? Like, figure it out instead of just being like, oh, undesirable behaviour, better tie them up. Like, yeah, I don't want to imply that people are being tied up. I don't know shit about that. It just came out my mouth. But there's definitely a total lack of understanding why those who perhaps can't verbalise or can't explain why they're doing it. I mean, I can't even explain fully why I'm doing it, why I did it. At the time, I definitely couldn't have explained to you. I was just like, it makes me feel better. But it just really disgusts me how those who perhaps can't get their point across as to why they're doing it. It's just seen as undesirable behaviour because it's difficult for whoever's caring for them to manage. When they're sat there hurting themselves over something that you could change, you could help them, it angers me, it boils me up a little bit. But with that being said, it brings us towards the end of the video. As always, I do make these videos for the most part, usually most of them, to open up a discussion. It's because I want to hear your opinions and your thoughts and your experiences, because they're not out there. Autistic people's thoughts and experiences are not out there. We're not the ones that are getting to educate people for the most part. And I really like that we can have this little place where I spurt my opinion at you all, and then I get other people's opinions and stuff in the comments from like other autistic people, self-diagnosed or otherwise. From, you know, I'm even interested in, you know, typical ADHD, like whatever you got going on. I just like it to be a discussion. I like to feel like I'm learning something, like you all might be learning something, like, you know, just like we're doing something. And especially with like topics like this where, you know, I think it's a really important topic, and I think that it's an area that lacks a lot of support. I didn't feel supported when I was really struggling with it. I had to just sort of figure out how to stop on my own. No one helped me. You know, I know this isn't going to be the most helpful thing. I know that you're not about to like stop self-harm because of this video. It's not what this is for. If anything, it's just, there's fucking loads of us autistic people that are self-harming in one way or another. And I know that I've been made to feel really stupid and weak and pathetic and attention-seeking and many another thing due to it. And that sucks, and it's not fair. And the stigma around it shouldn't be the way it is. And the amount of autistic people that are experiencing self-harm shouldn't be as high as it is. So that's what this is. I'm gonna shut the fuck up now. Whoever you are, wherever you are, I hope you're having a lovely morning, evening, day, afternoon, week, month, year. And I'll see you again in a few days.